I'm Jessica Anne Pressler, and you've tuned into Your Traitor Within, a podcast that exposes the brutal truths of healing, self-discovery, and breaking free from relentless patterns of self-sabotage. Lisa McCourt crafts books that radiate joy and love, captivating over 9 million readers, while she masterfully imparts the rare and transformative art of emotional buoyancy through her electrifying online Joy School. As the dynamic host of the Joy Zone podcast and a visionary founder of Joy School, Lisa has shared profound secrets of joy with thousands of eager learners for more than 2 decades. When Lisa isn't igniting souls through her online Joy School or some in-person events, or her myriad of collaborative endeavors, she immerses herself in the tranquility of nature with her husband and daughters, raising her voice in a choir and passionately serves her community as the fearless president of her local PFLAG chapter. In Lisa's own profound words, I believe in our innate, ever-evolving capacity to forge peace and bliss for ourselves and others. Lisa, your ability to guide people toward living more joyful, effective, emotionally mature, and self-actualized lives is nothing short of extraordinary. I am deeply convinced that your wisdom is not merely theoretical, but profoundly rooted in your own lived experiences. It is my profound honor to welcome you to Your Traitor Within podcast. I want to thank you in advance for your courage and vulnerability as you share your story of your traitor within. Not only have I known you since college.
I think that for me, that traitor that you help people with so beautifully and eloquently has always manifested as that frightened part of me that's needed to please at all costs, right? It was that program that got installed super early in life. I learned in my earliest childhood years that it was dangerous to not be a compulsive pleaser. I had to develop that intuitive skill of reading exactly what someone wanted me to be in that moment, transforming chameleon-like into whatever that was, because it was dangerous not to have that highly developed skill. So, so often in Joy School, we talk about our gifts and our challenges are all wrapped up together. So I'm grateful for the intuitive ability, the empathy that was something that, I had to learn at an early age. In Joy School, we call it our bucket beliefs, those core beliefs that we integrate early on to ensure our survival. And they are hard to ever fully get rid of, right? They become personality traits, I think, no matter what we do with them, but there are ways to mold them into something more conducive, right? So becoming aware of them is always the first step. And then it takes a lot of consistent work to mold them into something more beautiful and more helpful.
And what do you do when you're triggered? Because sometimes, I always believe the traitor within, or what, is always there. So you put them in your pocket, you put them in the garage, you put them in the closet, whatever you do. But we have triggers that even, so now we have awareness, as you said, that is the first step to know we have one. So what do you do? And maybe it doesn't come out anymore. Maybe it's so put away that it's not. But if that people pleasing part of you pops up in your adult life, how do you handle it?
Say that our triggers are opportunities. They're always our warning bell that, like, ooh, you have an opportunity for growth here. Here's something that you can look at. Here's a place that you need to heal. So we try to have gratitude for our triggers. And the process is really one of shifting into the observer, right? We're all two selves. We're all our horizontal self playing out our human-y life here. And we're all a vertical self, a soul self that has the capacity to witness this human creature with all of its foibles and challenges. And when we can switch into the vertical self and hold the horizontal self who's being triggered with the utmost compassion. And it's so important to let whatever wants to come up, to let the fear come up, let the frustration, even if we recognize this is like a little toddler tantrum emotion that wants to come up, to allow it, to not judge it, to hold ourselves in compassion. And so we do a lot of those, what I call feel to heal exercises in Joy School. And for me, yeah, I see it come up all the time. And you're right. I've done so much work to heal it. I know that it's my big one that I'm here to resolve and continuously work with. And yet a few years ago, I had it come up in a monstrous way when members of my family left my family because they didn't approve of my care of my transgender daughter, and it knocked me off my game for I'm going to say it took a year just to fully recover
Wow.
from that, because somebody who was supposed to love me wasn't loving me after all of the work that I had done, in these relationships, and my whole adult life had been about making sure to meet them there and hold the right space and have compassion for where they are in their journey. And then to have all that fall apart was really devastating for someone who really like breathes other people's love and approval.
Right. But you can't change another person, and you can't love them enough to change, because it really has to be with them. And I want to say how sorry I am that you have had to go through that, and that grief and that pain, and that, and and I know your story, so I know, and I want to hug you, and I'm so sorry that you had to go have NM. It's still part of you, right?
Yeah, I'll take that hug.
Yes. Well, one day in person, I hope. Um,
Sure.
so this part of you, this people pleasing part, how did it show up in your teenage years? How did it show up throughout your life?
Yeah. I think a lot of what I had internalized was that I was unlovable, and particularly from men. I had a father figure that definitely had that messaging for me. So a lot of relationships where I don't think I ever dated a monster, a bad guy. I've heard you, talk about these like
Mhm.
classic evil narcissist men. I don't think that was ever the case for me, but I certainly would always gravitate towards someone who couldn't possibly give me the kind of love that I was so hungry for.
Mhm.
And but because that was the natural dynamic that was so familiar to me, and I think that's what we always do before we can see it and learn to do better, is we gravitate toward what's natural and what feels
Mhm.
familiar.
Mhm.
And so a lot of relationships that I prioritized too much in my life and made too much of my concern, that would leave me feeling really alone and bereft.
Mhm. And did you people please with that person? Did you, besides excusing their behavior, maybe, did you find yourself doing everything, like twisting into pretzels in order to try to make it work? And
Always. I really thought that was just the role that
Mhm.
maybe I thought it was the role that women were supposed to play, but if it wasn't women in general, then it was definitely my role in the world.
I mean,
And
I do agree there's a piece, especially for our generation and the generations before us. I think it's just changing now that women were the ones that are supposed to make everything better, right? So we definitely, I think that the traitor within is definitely formed in childhood out of trauma and trying to, survive and feel safe. But I think there's an aspect that the traitor within can be formed also, or along with society.
mhm,
And women definitely have the role that you talk about. I don't think it's that uncommon for women to feel like it's their job
mhm,
to make everything better.
right. We all have our independent personal wounds and
Right.
traumas and collective wounds. And I think that is a collective trauma of women of bearing that role for sure.
And understanding your traitor within, understanding this part of you, how have you tried to stop the next generation, your daughters, from not learning that piece, not, intergenerational trauma?
Yeah, thank you for that. I do I do have some feelings about not having done my work faster, sooner, better for my first daughter. My first daughter is my transgender daughter. And just in the 4 years between her time and the time that my second daughter came along, that was a tremendous growth time for me.
Mhm.
So I feel that Talia, both from the womb, internalized and learned from me a lot of people pleasing that
Mhm.
in my mind, in my estimation, she doesn't say this, but to my mind, that's probably a lot of why it took her as long as it did for her to come out as transgender. I
Mhm.
feel like she had absorbed so much of me wanting to make everybody happy, that
Mhm.
that's what kept her closeted for as long as she was. Um, I think it's all about learning to love yourself. That sounds so cliche, but it's such a huge thing.
True. I think it's true.
We can never allow anyone else to love us more than we're loving ourselves, right? We teach people how to treat us. So I think just
Mhm.
becoming aware of that when they were still young and making sure that they saw me even before I had fully stepped into it and was feeling it myself. I wanted to make sure that they saw me being a self-loving person. I would make sure that they never heard me, talk bad about myself or disparage
Mhm.
my looks or,
Mhm.
I think that was on my mind to fake it even before I was making it there
Mhm.
with them. um how else with daughters, I think it's just really just making sure they feel so honored and so clear and clean in being who they are, that that's what they project to their partners, which is not
Mhm.
something that I had ever learned early on to project to partners.
But you do now, right? You have this amazing relationship now.
Yeah.
When did the change started happening? When did you wait, obviously when your daughters were younger, which is not as young as before birth, as you said, for your oldest, but you started to have a transformation then, and it was just, how did that happen?
I have been doing personal growth since we were in college, and I was like very secret about it then. Like it really was like a closet obsession. I read my first Wayne Dyer book at 14. I have no idea how that book found its way into my hands, but I didn't want anybody to know that I had this weird hobby, this weird like thing that lit me up. But I had been doing it for so long. I'm a slow study. It took a while for the
Well,
thing
there's, I don't
to
know if you're a slow study, you're willing to take all the information in, so it takes
yeah.
time to do that. But I
Yeah, my
wish I knew in college that you were, because I would have loved to have gone down that road with you.
we were both like too concerned with what everybody would think to have shared that secret obsession. But I was doing a TM in my 20s and starting to go on retreats, and I really, I think, got serious about it, after I had gotten into the marriage where my daughters were born with that husband. So it just was something that unfolded as they were growing, that really, that when I got very serious about practicing and even writing about and teaching
Mm-hmm.
spiritual truths and personal growth truths.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So you started to explain it before, but I love the collaborative piece of what you've been doing this whole time and the Traitor Within. Can you again speak a little bit more about that?
The collaborative piece,
You have an understanding of the Traitor within your own practice already forever, right? So just,
yeah.
and people
I
understand the
I
piece.
was on a Zoom call with a friend this morning who I was telling her how I'm going to be on your podcast. I'm going to talk about the Traitor Within. So we were sort of musing about that, and she had just written something that I love, so I pulled it to share about this. This is Karen
Right.
Samuelson. She goes by Not Salmon on socials. She wrote, "Most good things feel like a mix of joy and sandpaper, and most hard things aren't just torturing us; they're stretching us. That's why we wind up with contradictory fridge magnets. One that says never give up, right next to another one that says let it go." And I think that's how I just wanted to share that because it's how I sort of framed this Traitor Within. It's like if I hadn't had that piece,
Hmm.
I wouldn't have struggled throughout my life the way I have. I've had some significant struggles and created some life circumstances out of that piece that have caused a lot of challenges. And yet I can be so grateful for that growth, right? For the growth that it inspired. And I love that because as much as I recognize the traitor that I've been to myself in so many stages, I feel like even something like being a pathetic people pleaser who always felt like it was my job to keep everyone around me happy, once I did healing around that, I was able to transmute it into what I do today, which is hysterically all about making people be happy or helping people to be happy. So
Hmm.
I do kind of have a push pull with the traitor. I guess I don't want it to be something inside me that I'm combating and fighting against and trying to sublimate. I want to just give her a hug and thank her for all of her
Yeah.
protective work that she's done.
I've always said that my hope is that people have compassion for their traitor and to always know that they come from a place of wanting to help. They're just leading with blinders on.
Yes.
As you know, for me, my main trauma was fear of abandonment. And so the blinders were, no matter what I do, the traitor. No matter what I'm going to do for you, Jessica, I'm going to make sure you're not going to feel abandoned. But that didn't mean she wasn't going to put me in a situation of suicide, a situation of abuse, a situation, you know what I mean? So we can look at this part of us as being someone that wants to do what good wants to do good for us, wants to do what's right. They're just misguided or
Yeah.
narrowly guided, tunnel vision. And in doing so can actually cause harm.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree very much. And do you find in the clients that you work with and the people you interview that everybody has a traitor? Because I don't think I've ever met anyone who didn't in some
Yeah. And
way.
it comes out in many different ways. I've had people talk about alcoholism or drug use. I've had people talk about how they act in a work situation and staying in jobs. People pleasing is a big one. I mean, you're not alone in the people pleasing piece because I think as a child, if you're in an unsafe environment, what great way to feel safe is to do whatever you can to be loved, you hope. And to be safe. So I think that's a common one that shows up in different ways. But using substance abuse is not uncommon because especially if they watch their parent do the same thing. So that, because part of the trader is messaging and modeling. So it's not just coming out of trauma, but you learn, through messaging and modeling what to do and how to take that into your adult relationships.
Think about that Buddhist maxim too about that when you pull back the bow on the arrow, the further you pull it back, the further the arrow is going to soar. And how so often whatever we struggled with, like my learning how to be a people pleaser for me at a young age was pretty much learning to be invisible. I needed to just like be invisible, not have any needs, not do anything. And in
Mhm.
school, I didn't talk. My teachers thought I was mute for like the first few years. I couldn't write
Mhm.
anything on paper. Like I would take the test and they said they would have to hold it up to the light to see if I had even taken it because I couldn't press down on a
That's
pencil
emotionally fascinating that you couldn't even push like to because you couldn't get it out.
and express
It
it. It
wasn't
was so
safe.
scary
It
to
wasn't
express
safe.
myself at all. And in that overcoming of that, I've like built this whole career and existence around expressing myself and being visible and being loud, and that is so like fulfilling and nurturing to me in a way that it might not be to somebody else who never struggled so much with it, right?
Well, you made meaning. You needed it to, you made meaning out of it.
Yeah.
I think, and how was it scary to do that at first?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Must have been.
And just so liberating. I mean, when I started speaking, it was when I had written a really successful children's book like over 2 decades ago, and I would be invited to schools and libraries and like conferences, like children's book conferences, and the thought of like what I have to go up there and talk to people was just like absolutely the worst thing I
From
could
someone who
imagine.
didn't speak, who couldn't write dark, to have to do that how did
Yeah.
you overcome that? How did you do it?
I think I thought of it was just something people pleasing because my
Okay,
publisher
got
told me
it.
to do it because like if my publisher says I have to do it, I have to just do it. And then
Wow. Yeah.
gradually just like the exhilaration of seeing that I could and like expanding it little by little and people are interested in what I have to say. It was just like so intoxicating. Like it just was the opposite of everything I believed about myself. And it just
Right.
kind of built from there.
Yeah. Wow. Very. Yeah. Are you feeling safe now? Do you feel so that that you're safe enough to be? I mean, I always say someone had asked me on a podcast, "What's recovery for you?" And I said, "Recovery for me is being safe enough to be me." Do you feel that those layers are gone and you could just be you now?
I will say without hesitation, I feel safer than I've ever felt in my life. I
Hmm.
mean, there's probably not a next layer to it. There probably is, I hope so. I hope it never ends unraveling. But yeah, and I've done a lot of writing and talking and speaking about how our work is internal work and we can create this, conditions for ourselves and everything is, an inside job. But if I'm honest, for me, nothing did that for me in a more significant, really lasting wow way than being with my current husband. It was the not just the first romantic relationship, but the first human relationship I had ever had where I really felt that I could just let go and be all of me and just to have that day to day consistent space held for me to be all of what I am was tremendously healing for me. So I don't like to send that messaging like you need a good partner in order to heal, because I think it can be done either way. I just know in my journey, having that, but I know that I had to do the work to attract that and be ready
Mm-hmm.
and be
And be
available
ready for it because because it could be right in front of you, and if you're not ready for it, you could let it go by.
for sure.
But I do believe, though, that it helps to surround ourselves by, it doesn't have to be, a romantic partner, but to surround ourselves by people who are compassionate, empathetic, non-judgmental, and, compassionate, and who can just listen and be by your side in order to give a safe place to be yourself. And how amazing you found it in a partner, a life
Yeah.
partner.
I mean, it's beautiful when parents can do it for kids. I know some
Mm.
really highly conscious parents with young kids like today that I could look at and say, wow, like, did anybody have that kind of parenting when we were growing up? I don't think anybody did.
Well, what's so incredible, two pieces, I don't know, two pieces came to my mind. One is the most important job is being a parent. And no one teaches you how. You learn from your parents. That's how people learn to parent. Maybe it's, there are some books out there. Maybe Dr. Spock was something we like our parents said. But uh but there really isn't. Well, now I guess we're better at it, but it really is something that should be taught. You know, and compat and empathy needs to be. I mean, I think that empathy is the number one most important piece of parenting, to teach, to model, and to teach your children. I mean, I always remember being the proudest when when I would hear from a teacher, not so much about their grades, but about how they helped Johnny, when he fell down and they went and picked him up. So I think that's really important for parents to do. But sometimes a teacher could be a really good person in a child's life too. It doesn't always have to be the parent. The ideal is that it's the parent. And but I've always been a believer that, and I know some people don't do this. I know in crisis management, you don't have to do this, but your childhood really is vitally important in who you are today. And I think you mentioned it. I'm not sure you meant this, but I do feel that even when you're in the womb, how your mother is feeling is
Yeah.
important. And maybe before that too, and how you choose your next life and what. But it all plays a part, and then your life opens up, and you are either given the skills and the compassion and safe place as a child to be you, which is the ideal. And if you're not, then then the traitor is formed. And yeah.
Inherited a lot of times, right? Like the specific traitor. I feel like we're mostly the product of our parents'
Right.
emotional makeup
Stuff.
when we're young. Yeah. And what I see happening now today that's so promising and beautiful is parents who have done so much of the work themselves that they can just welcome a child with curiosity, which is the absolute top most healthy thing that you can do. Is like, what will this child be like? I can't wait to see. I can't wait to find out, instead of the slightly yesterday paradigm of, I'm going to make this child into the best version of this child because, and that was love. That was like, I want my child to have the best
Well, it's
competitive.
narcissistic love. That's what a narcissist does to their child.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's out of a sincere fear that if I don't mold and shape this child just right, they're not going to survive out there in that jungle, because they have that fear for themselves and they just embrace.
Right. Which is putting, yeah. I mean, I remember a friend of mine who is just a silly example, who was scared of bees. And every time a bee would come around them, they would scream and they would run. And and I remember sitting with their child while they're running down the street. But this is what their child saw. Her children were scared of bees. And you have to.
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing you just said was, needing to be where your child is. That your child comes in the world being already a person, and you need to nurture who they are and be where they are. No different than, I think, how, I can't speak for you, but how I am with my patients when they come into my office. I'm not here to tell them what to do. I'm here to work with who they are and their goals. Now, yes, does a little baby have goals that I can understand? No, but you understand them through you pick up their language, the way they look, the way they express, and I think that depending on where the mother or primary caregiver. I say the mother only because many times the mother is the one who is engaging with the infant, especially because if they're breastfeeding or whatever, they're the ones that are there. It's the whole interplay that they have with this infant, right? The way they look at each other, the way they mimic the child. You don't just want the child to mimic you. You want to connect, right, with the child and just love and just give
Right.
them love and safety. And but we need to teach people who didn't have that in their childhood. And so when people go to Lamaze, and I'm not even sure if people go to Lamaze anymore, but when people go to Lamaze, that should be taught, not
Yes.
not just how to push the baby out and breathe.
I think that's what makes the difference in a child having any innate sense of self-worth is just how attuned to they were. And so many parents don't know how to do that really um wide open holding space for a child.
Well,
That
imagine, and this, I'll just give an example that may come close to home. But so you have a little boy who wants to dress up in little girl clothes, and I don't mean this to the father, but I think the father's like, no, no, put on and already you're squashing who they are immediately without even, I want to cry because it's, I think the whole part of parenting is to help a child, to guide a child to be safe being who they are, and then let them fly,
yeah.
and not who you want them to be. And I get the fear because you talked about it. You want them to feel safe. If even the greatest parent in the world who has fears, may impose that on their child, not meaning it's a traitor without, like it's a traitor within becoming, hurt, potentially harming another. But the ideal is to nurture whoever that child is to be the best of who they are. And then, then thankfully, then there'll be no need for therapists in the future. And they just
Do you think there's like a contrast that gets set up sometimes too? Like that it's really children are so energetically sensitive and empathic that they pick up what's really going on, even if like something different is being presented.
yes.
I'm thinking of like in my own journey, I did tons of therapy and different sorts of work and it was uncovered that shame was like my like really like predominant like an energy that was just really solidly like in my field was just this intense shame energy. And I remember thinking like my mom was the most confident, powerful, like I would never have like she just always was this just like very very strong presenting confident powerful woman.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that was a overcompensation, and what I was picking up was what was underneath there, and
Mm-hmm.
that coupled with like what you said about I believe that the emotions are transmuted in the womb. And I was an unwanted pregnancy when she was a teen, and she brought tremendous shame to the family. She was in this Southern Baptist little community where the church was their whole life, and they were thrown out of the church. My grandmother was the Sunday school teacher. They were like ostracized by the church because this thing had happened to the teenage daughter. So she had so much shame that no one ever even knew who my biological father was. She never told me. She just like blocked it all out because of the intense shame. So I probably picked up all of that, and
Mm-hmm.
she probably was determined to project something opposite that, but yet still what I assimilated was the deep shame.
Wow. Okay, I want to hug you again. I just do that. Wow. Did your mother ever be able to talk about any
Yeah,
of this?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But it showed up in her life too. She there was a couple of things early on with a she had found somebody to marry because she was supposed to, like while she was pregnant. So I was born with one dad who they said was really great with me, but she had sort of forced the whole thing. So she left him when I was 2 for this other dad who wasn't great. And I think that she had not a marriage that reflected her lack
Mm-hmm.
of support at the time. So that was what I saw. I felt very unloved by this father figure. They told me he was my father. I didn't find out till I was 35, Jess, that he wasn't my dad.
Wow.
He was, put in that role of like, he's your dad. And then, yeah, I think that was part of what was going on under the surface for my mom.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, another hug. Another. So if you would look back and tell your younger self anything, what would you tell her?
Oh my goodness. I would tell her that she can exhale, that she can just relax, that it's going to be okay. I think I just was I grew up so afraid of the world, afraid of people. And I don't think I projected that. I think I really made a big effort to
No,
always,
because you were a people pleaser, you would not project that.
right. But just so much fear. And yeah, just I would just wanna tell her that she's gonna be fine, that everything's okay.
Mhm. Is there anything you want to add today?
Mm, I love this. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Yeah, just it again is going to sound so cliche, but just for the listeners to do a self-love check. Just do a self-love check every second of the day. How am I loving myself right now? How am I loving myself right now? We do a little practice in Joy School of just like checking in and what am I honestly feeling? Because we don't take the time to do that unless we almost schedule it, right? Some of my Joy Schoolers will put their watch to go off at certain intervals during the day just to, what am I feeling and what do I need? What do I need right now? Because it's just, there are so many little opportunities to nurture ourselves and show ourselves compassion and kindness throughout the day that unless we are intentional about it, we can miss those opportunities. And the more we can be intentional with our own self-love and self-compassion, the more we're signaling that to the world that this is what we deserve.
That's great advice. Thank you.